Hello everyone, my name is Amber. Welcome back to my channel, Amber Reads Romance. Today I'm going to be doing my end of the month wrap up for August. It was such a great month. I had some amazing reads. I'll briefly kind of go over my stats. I read 30 books total for the month, which was really good for me. Some of them were even like longer books because the first half of the month I read Shanna, that's like a 600 something page book. I read Hawk too, that was like another 600. So I had some like thicker books in there. So I'm happy with the amount I read. I think a lot of it had to do with the Romance Readathon. It was so much fun. I can't wait to do it again next year. So like if you guys didn't participate, I think it'd be fun to try it next year. I think it should be next year in August or September again under like a different theme. So that was a lot of fun. So I'm going to put my stats up here just of the different books that I read. I ended up having one 6-star, which I talked about in my previous video, which was the mid-month wrap-up. And then I had 15 5-star reads. So that was really, really good. I'm very happy with that. I had 8 4-stars. I think I had one 3.5-star. It'll be up here. I might have missed... I forgot to write these down ahead of time. And then I had 2 3-stars. And unfortunately, I had 3 2-stars. But I didn't have a DNF or anything like that. So it was a really successful month. I had so much fun doing the readathon. So it's been a great month of August. So I'm just going to dive right in because like always, I ended up talking way too long on my mid-month wrap up. So I don't want to do that again. And I have 15 books to go over. So I'm going to try and make this faster. We'll see how it goes. So I'm going to start with the first book that I read for the second half of the month, and that is Resting Witch Phase by Juliette Cross. This is book number 5 in the Stay a Spell series. And this is a highly anticipated book because this is between Ruben and Jules. And Jules is like the head, I can't remember what it's called, but she's like kind of head of the witch coven up, and she's in charge and everything like that. She's the oldest sister. She's the most powerful sister. And so I was really highly anticipating her romance because Ruben is also a vampire and they were previously together, but you kind of in the other books, you know, they were together, but something happened and they broke up and they kind of have this contentious, sometimes strained relationship. So I was really excited to get to their book to see what happened with them. So I really loved this book. If you've watched my channel or my videos, you'll know that I don't really always like second chance romance. It doesn't always work for me because a lot of the times the reason they weren't together or they broke up, I think is stupid or something like that. This book I thought was so well done. And it did second chance right. And I loved it. And what I liked too is it wasn't super angsty. I expected going into this that Jules was gonna like fight them getting back together, because going into this, they are, let me tell you what the book's about, I guess. So going into this, they are basically, it's this long running storyline about how they're trying to give werewolves a voice and them to be part of this, you know, the High Coven or whatever it's going to be called. Because they were basically there was this prejudice against werewolves, that they were too violent, they couldn't control their inner beasts. But this was a curse that witches put on them a long time ago. And so they've been trying in other books to kind of help the werewolves. In one of the books, they actually do this like kind of a tattoo with like a spell and everything so that it is kind of controlling that werewolf, so it's not the inner beast kind of controlling them, and so it's helped out a lot of werewolves. So Jules and Ruben are actually going on a road trip. They have to go kind of plead this case on this change of trying to give the werewolves a seat on this kind of council kind of thing. I can't remember what it's called, I'm sorry. But they're going to be going to a few different places, and they're going over to the UK. And so they are going to be stuck on this road trip together and kind of forced proximity. And Ruben kind of decides at this one of her sister's weddings that he like tells her like, your time's up. Like, I'm done waiting. It's happening. So she's very nervous because Jules does have very much in love with him, had feelings for him. And they broke up 12 years ago. So he has been waiting and pining after her for 12 years. And Ruben is such a sexy vampire. He's like the head of the vampires in Louisiana and the New Orleans, where they're at. And he's just so swoon-worthy in this because he has been pining for her. He doesn't want to be with anybody else. He kind of knows, like, that's my mate. But like they had to break up for reasons, and the reasons were justified. And then now they're kind of forced on the road together, and Jules is worried about it because she knows she like cares about him, loves him, but she doesn't know if it'll be a good thing for them. But Ruben basically kind of woos her. And what I liked about this was that Jules wasn't like fighting it the whole time. Like, you know, you always see those second chance or whatever where like enemies to lovers, which they're not really enemies. It's just, you know, stuff was strained between them where like the woman fights it. No, like Jules pretty much knows like she wants to be with him. She loves him. And they're finally at the place because they've been growing for the last 12 years separately. And so they had to kind of separate, but he did not want it. And, you know, it was very tough on them. So I really loved them coming together. There was high suspense in this book because we do have these different kind of vampires and their politics that are going on in the UK and all this other stuff going on. So I really loved it. It was a really quick read. I believed their second chance. I wanted them to be together. It was spicy. Juliette Cross has some great sex in these books. They're just really, really good. I'm so excited to finish this series with the next book because I've been waiting for the Grimm Henry's book forever. And so, like, I'm so excited for it. So I ended up giving this one 5 stars. It does have the road trip, forced proximity. It has us sharing one bed, all of that kind of stuff. There's some sexy, you know, he is a vampire, so there's some sexy, like, blood play kind of things in this. And I just loved it. I love the characters. I love how strong they were. And I gave it 4 chilies. It's very spicy and like a really cute setting. So I definitely appreciate Juliette Cross because she got me to love a second chance romance. Okay, so the next book that I read, I'm not going to go too deep into it. I ended up doing a vlog for it, so I will link that down below. So if you want to get my kind of spoilery or deep thoughts on this book, check it out. But I did decide to finally read the Bridgertons, and I read the first book, which was The Duke and I. And I am probably going to try and vlog each book. We'll see how it goes, how far I get into it. I know I'm probably like one of the only people out there who hasn't read this series. I haven't read the series. I hadn't watched the Netflix show or anything like that. So I basically kind of dove in blind into this. I really enjoyed the first half, 60% of the book. I think Julia Quinn had really easy, like I listened to an audiobook, so it was easy to listen to. It was fast paced. It did go a little slow a little bit in the beginning, but I think that's because she's introducing this family and kind of like the setup of this world. I did love the Bridgertons, especially the mother. Like, I loved her character, and I can't wait to get to read each of these Bridgertons. So I did think it did a really good job. And then setting up the hero, Simon, I found his character very interesting. A heartbreaking introduction to his story because he was, you know, born from like a mother that had multiple miscarriages. She died after his childbirth. His father basically was horrible. He had speech, you know, issues in the beginning when he was a young child, and then he even had a stutter, and his father basically treated him less than because of that. So I really enjoyed that setup of this character. I just had issues with a scene that ends up happening after like the 60-70% mark, which I'm not going to go into because that's kind of spoiler, but it went from like a 4-star book to a 2-star book. So I did not like the heroine. I loved her in the first half, but the thing that happens really pissed me off. I do rant about it in my vlog, so you can see it there if you want to know, but I basically gave this 2 stars. I think I gave it like 2. I don't even think I put chilies on here because I honestly didn't really care about the sex as much. So I think it was like a 2 on the chilies. It wasn't that spicy or anything. But I did love the first half. I loved the writing. I liked the banter was amazing. It's just that one thing that happens that basically sent me over the edge and made me give it a 2-star. But I am excited to go on to the next one, which is going to be her brothers, which I'm sure you all know because you probably have read these books. But I'm excited to finally dive into the Bridgerton series. Okay, so then I read The Untamed by K Webster. And I'm doing a vlog for this. I haven't posted it yet, so I will try and get that up probably this week, I'm hoping. This is book number 3 in the Wild. So it's like the Wild and like the Wild series that K Webster did. This is basically the second generation. So if you've read The Wild or have heard of it, it is basically a very taboo father-daughter romance. They're stuck in the Alaskan wilderness. And then this is actually their children's romance. And it is a MMF. Although in this book, we don't really have any sexy times. Like there's a little bit going on, but it barely gets there. So, which was shocking because I was expecting the spice from K Webster, but this is, ends on a cliffhanger. Their story is not over. So just know that going in because you might get upset because the cliffhanger is brutal. But what we have is it really sets up this world because we're going back to this wild world and they've built this like homestead. They've had, I think, like 9 kids, if I'm right. So Devin and Reed have been busy and they have a whole, they have like got older children, younger children. She even has like a 1-year-old. So they're still going after it, even though like Reed, I think, is like 60 in his 60s. But I loved it going back to this, setting it up, showing us kind of what's going on with each of these siblings because it kind of had to reintroduce us into that, what the world is like now. And so this romance is going to be between Regan, which is the daughter, and then the 2 brothers, which is Ryder and Ronan. So in this, you basically have this world set up. You kind of have, they're not fully like into each other, but they have these unnatural thoughts of being attracted to their siblings. And I don't want to go too much into it because it's pretty crazy. We got like Regan, who like loves Ronan. He's like her best friend. She just trusts him implicitly. The parents are afraid of the kids getting attracted and trying to be together. So they've laid down the law on that. And they've even sent like one of their oldest like out to the city. So they don't want these kids to like get sexual with each other because they're brothers and sisters. So they've been really watching Regan because she's really like has a super close relationship with Ronan. He's kind of the sensitive, sweet guy. He's, very quiet, sweet, nerdy kind of guy. And he actually kind of has inappropriate thoughts for his brother, Ryder. And then Ryder has inappropriate thoughts about Regan. So it's very interesting. You'll get more detail on my vlog, which hopefully I'll post later this week. But I ended up loving it. Just beware, the cliffhanger is going to rock you. But K Webster already has a second one coming out in September. I think September 18th, if I'm correct. I'm hoping I'll get the arc for that, but I'm not sure if I will. So I gave this 5 stars, and really there wasn't much spice. There is some like hand stuff and little things that got you into it because it's so taboo. So I think I gave it like 2 chili peppers, but not a lot of spice going in, but I still loved it and I couldn't put it down, just like usual with K Webster books. So then I read another K Webster book, and I actually read a few this month. And I read The Glue. So this one is actually a poly MMF relationship. We have a kind of like a marriage in trouble. We have, let me see here. It's Vaughn and Vale. So Vaughn and Vale have had trouble. So trigger warnings for like infertility issues or trouble having, conceiving and all of that. So that has come into play into their marriage where they've basically grown apart because it became like this over the top scheduled like thing, and then when they're unable to get pregnant, it led to a lot of issues with them. Vaughn is a teacher, and he ends up getting this student, what was his name again? Oh yeah, Aiden. So Aiden's, I believe, he's 18 years old, And then I believe Vaughn, I don't remember how old he was. I think he might have been in his 30s or 40s. But he basically has an attraction to his teacher. He's kind of looking at his sexuality because he's pretty much figuring out he's bi. He was in a previous relationship with a girl, but he is very attracted to men too. So he's got a thing going on with his teacher. And then he also works at this little coffee shop kind of thing. And that is with Vaughn's wife, Vale. And so he ends up kind of having these two connections to both these characters. There is kind of a little bit of cheating going on here because they don't know that either one of these married couple is like talking to this kid. So like that may be kind of frustrating for you, but it turns, like they find out about it pretty quickly. And they realize they've both been kind of flirting and being inappropriate with the same guy. And so he ends up kind of wanting, like, figuring out what's going on with them and wanting them to try and work on their relationship. But they feel like they can't really do that, like, without him. And so it's a very interesting dynamic of him being a part of their relationship, but not wanting to be, like, the only thing that's just holding them together, but, like, them actually all being together. So I thought it was very sexy. It was very cute, a really quick read. This is part of her, I believe it's the Taboo Treat series. And I listened to an audiobook. It was a really quick audiobook and I enjoyed it. So, I mean, I gave it 4 stars and 4 chilies. Okay, so next I read Ladyruthless by Scarlet Scott. I've been seeing this make the rounds, and I was trying to get more historicals in for the Romance Readathon, but I saw a lot of people loving this book. It just didn't work for me. So in this, we have Justin, or AKA Sin. He's the Earl of Sinclair, and then we have Lady Calliope. Lady Calliope is actually secretly writing as like a fake surname, whatever, and she is writing these fake stories from his perspective of basically kind of ruining his whole reputation, making it out like he killed his wife and like her brother. And so it's kind of like these memoirs from him that she's writing. And now it's destroyed his chances of like a marriage that he was trying to get because he's not doing well financially and he needed to marry this heiress. And it's basically it's like ruined his life. So she thinks that he's responsible for her brother's death and his wife dying. This is where my problem was because I did not like this heroine. She had no evidence, it doesn't even look like he really even did it. When your story goes on, it's like you're really reaching to say that he is responsible for your brother's death and his wife's death, and you have no evidence. You haven't looked deeper into it, but you're willing to like ruin this guy's reputation and his life. And so my problem with this is like the first 50% of this book is literally it's a captor. He basically captures her and he's going to make her marry him since she ruined everything else for him. She's going to marry him. He's going to punish her, all that. And I'm all good on that, like the captive type of thing. I love that. And it would have been great. It was just the same argument over and over, and like not communicating about like him not doing it, or like he would literally say he didn't do it, but then like, I don't know, it didn't work for me. I didn't like the heroine. I thought that she really like jumped to conclusions and ruined this guy's life for nothing. And so I didn't really support it. So like I actually was reading it physically and it was like just not going well for me. So I ended up listening to the rest of it on audiobook, and the narrator did the worst male voice. Like it was like this nasally, raspy, it was just horrible. So I think that also made it not enjoyable for me. So I ended up giving this 3 stars. It is super spicy. I just didn't care about the sex scenes because I was bored and I didn't care about this couple. Now, I might be in the minority. You might love this book because I saw a lot of people giving it 5 stars. I just didn't like the heroine, and I thought her reasons for doing what she did were really stupid, and like it just didn't make sense. So 3 stars. Wasn't really a favorite for me, but I did enjoy the writing, and I think that I would definitely try this author again. This is the first time I've ever read Scarlet Scott, so maybe it just was this one just didn't work for me. Okay, so then I read Midnight Pleasures with the Scoundrel. For the Romance Readathon, we were reading The Scoundrels of St. James as like a buddy read. And this is by Lorraine Heath. And this is book number 4 in that series. This is between James Swindler and Eleanor. And I loved this one. I thought it was really unique, very different. And James Swindler works for the Scotland Yard. He was one of the boys. They, you know, were kind of like thieves and like living on the streets together, but their lives have changed. He actually, his father died for, you know, stealing something that he blames himself for why his dad died. And he actually works for the Scotland Yard and is very good at what he does. He's very dedicated. He gets put on this case because this lord is saying that this woman is trying to kill him and she's kind of like stalking him. And so he's kind of put on this case to follow her and check into her. So he starts to kind of like put himself in her path to get her to trust him because he wants her to like tell him the truth of like what she's trying to do. And they start to slowly kind of like have meetups and talking and everything. And she is actually, it is a revenge book. She is after this lord because she blames him for her sister's death. Her sister basically took her own life after what happened to her. And and she had a diary and everything, and she read what happened to her sister and basically set up this revenge plan. And so she wants to get James close to her for her own reasons to be able to get to this guy. So there is a huge twist in this book that I didn't really see coming that I thought made it even better. And I really love James Swindler. I think he was such a cinnamon roll hero. I mean, he was gone for our heroine, and he was trying to do what he could to help her, but like not to go against his own morals. And I just really loved this book. I thought it was really interesting and different. So I ended up giving this one 5 stars, and it's 3 on the Chili's. So then I read Ruined Secrets by Neva Altaj. This is book number 4 in the Perfectly Imperfect series. I think this is such a great mafia series. It's very mafia light. They're very short, quick reads that are like still telling you a good story within that short read. So I think if like you were new to mafia, this would be a good series to start with. So this one is between Luca and Isabella. This is a big age gap. Luca is 35 and Isabella is 19. Isabella has been basically in love with Luca forever. Since she was a little kid, he basically saved her. I think it was from drowning or something. And so she's kind of had this hero worship of him since she was a little girl. And then obviously as she got older, it became a crush. And so she's been crushing on him for years. He was actually married, and he had a kid and everything. And so she kind of knew nothing could ever happen with them. And this is in the Cosa Nostra. The other books were previously in the Bratva. So this kind of moves to the Cosa Nostra. Well, Luca catches his wife cheating on him, and he basically like kills the guy and divorces her. And so now he's free. So her Isabella is actually like the princess, the mafia leader's daughter. I think granddaughter, I'm sorry. And he's like not doing well. He's pretty ill. So he wants to set up a marriage and have Luca be able to take over. So he sets up a marriage for them, and he has to marry Isabella now. Isabella is like super excited because she's been in love with him forever. He's not that happy about it. It's a pretty big age gap. He feels pretty creepy about it, but he is kind of attracted to her. But he won't have sex with her, so he sets her up in the room next to him, and she's pretty ballsy with the way she tries to seduce him and everything. But something happens, an attempt on his life that ends up making him lose his memory. And I'm not usually into the amnesia trope, but I thought this one was really well done. And she basically lies and makes it off like they are in love and they're in a happy marriage. And so she feels really guilty about this, but she goes after it. And then the complication is like he's the head of the mafia. So like if he like was seen to be weak and like have lost his memory, like he would be in danger, they would all be in danger. And so they basically kind of have to pretend like he's fine, and she helps him navigate that. That's what I loved about this, is she's really smart. Her and her mother like have these secret spies since they've been raised. Like they've been raised not to just be the mafia princesses, but to like be smart in the mafia. So she like knows who's up to what. She's got like, you know, stuff where she, you know, can blackmail people. She knows dirty secrets and all that kind of stuff. So I loved how like she was a powerful woman too and helped him get through this. So I really loved this. There's one thing that would have deducted half a star maybe for me, but I did give it 5 stars because I still really enjoyed it. And it was this weird thing that, I'm not kink shaming, but she would have him go to sleep with his like finger in her vagina, in her, or his dick in her, which I don't know how that could work, or be comfortable for while you're sleeping all night. And then she became obsessed with it, where he would like, she always wants a finger up her, so then he gives her toys to keep that in her while he's not in her. I don't know, it just was ridiculous to me, and it kind of took me out of the story. But I think it could be fun for somebody else. It just wasn't my thing. Okay. I went on to try and finish the Cora Chronicles. And the last book was not great. That was Savio's book. And I was pissed. I think I gave it 2 stars. Honestly, it's probably a 1 star. That book really pissed me off. I don't know what happened with Cora Reilly's end of her Cora Chronicles series. I don't know what happened, because the first 4 books are amazing and I love them. And then the last 2 are just horrible. And that's what I'm talking about. Sorry, I should probably tell you the book I read. I read Twisted Cravings, which was the final book. I think book number 6 in the Cora Chronicles. And this is Adamo's book. And I was so excited to read Adamo's book because he's been through a lot in the previous books. He was literally taken by the outfit. He was tortured. He had stuff that went on with his mom, because we all know how crazy their freaking mother was. And, you know, he even was sent off to go like to New York under Luca and stuff to kind of get his shit together, because he had like drug addiction issues. So all this stuff was going on with him that I was excited to get his story. And really the big fail in this was not really a Adamo story. It was about the heroine, and I didn't care. I wanted to go into flashbacks, see what happened to him, with how he felt with that, what happened, the torturing of the outfit. What was he up to? How did Luca get him like reined in New York? We didn't get any of that. And it was just all like, they're like, he runs basically, he kind of lives a nomadic lifestyle where he runs these illegal street races, and they kind of go all over, you know, Las Vegas or Nevada and these different like areas. And then we have Dinara, who is like a Bratva princess, and she has severe trauma. It's kind of it's very brutal type of trauma that she experienced. Sorry. So it was pretty brutal trauma that she experienced. As a child, she was basically assaulted. I think YouTube doesn't like the word when you bring up the, you know, word, but it's sexual assault by an adult, as she is a child, and she has really bad, like, there's a lot. I don't even want to go into it because it was just, I don't know, this book just was a fail for me. It was all about what happened to her and getting revenge on these people that raped her, and like on her mother, who basically kind of was like selling her to try and do that. You know, and it's on camera and stuff, so it's just very, very hard to see that. But also it's like, I didn't care. Like, Adamo was like very like two-dimensional. I thought we could have done so much more with his character. The only good parts of this book was when he would finally go back to Vegas and we'd see Remo or Nino. So like, all I cared about was Remo Falcone and Nino Falcone, and like seeing, you know, Chiara and all that. That made me happy. Seeing Serafina, like, that made me happy. But Adamo and like the romance and anything, I did not give an F about it. I didn't care. So I ended up giving this 2 stars, but it wasn't as bad as Savio's book. So maybe I should give Savio's book, put it back down to 1 star. I don't know. But I gave it 2 stars. I don't even think I rated it on the Chili's because I didn't care. It went on and on and on. It was longer than it needed to be. I was bored out of my mind. Okay, so enough with that. I also read another K Webster, which is Death Wish. This is the second part of the duet, the Deception duet, and this is the Terror triplets from her Cinderella series that she has. They were the villains. This is their story. And the first book was really good, but it was the triplets were all like kind of set to spy on this girl. She's a very privileged, rich girl, but actually has a horrible home life. Her father is very abusive to her, verbally and sexually, and she has to protect her younger sister who's deaf, and he treats her like shit because she's deaf, which is horrible. And so she's stuck in this home trying to like take on her father's abuse so that her sister doesn't get abused. So it is a lot of trigger warnings in this book, because in the last book, the triplets are pretending to be one person, and she ends up trying to getting away from her father, taking her sister to somebody who thinks she's going to help her, but it ends up being one of the triplets. And then it's all exposed that they're triplets and that they were kind of conning her. The thing is that these 2 of the triplets were like kind of falling for her and courting her and everything. And then Scout, which was the psychopath that was obsessed with Ash from the Cinderella series, he kind of was on the outsides of it, but he eventually gets hooked and he becomes obsessed with her. So he kind of set it up for her to find them and then find out the truth, and he wants to kind of keep her. So when they show up at this place, it's kind of like Scout forces her and her sister in, so it's kind of kept her captive a little bit, but they're also keeping her there for protection because her father will tear down everything and find them. So I really loved this book. It really explored more of the relationship, because now things were finally out in the open that she has a relationship with each of the triplets, and kind of just the different dynamics. And then sharing was happening, and it was super hot. Like, it was really sexy. Just beware, there's a lot of trigger warnings in this because her life is horrible. So, just make sure to check those. Okay, I have the trigger warnings. So we have severe abuse, sexual assault by a parent, and miscarriage. So just please be prepared to see that, because it does have a lot of dark content in this book. But it was very spicy, and I loved it. I think the duet was really good. I can't believe K Webster can get you to churn like these characters that you hated in one book, and I loved them. So I really enjoyed it. So I gave this one 5 stars, and it was 5 on the Chili's because I thought it was so sexy and the sharing scenes were hot, and I love each of these brothers. Okay, so I think I'm gonna have to rant. It might have some spoils in this because I'm pretty annoyed by this book. So I read an arc. It's the second part of a duet, and it is Cruel Master by Lucy Smoke and AJ Macey, I believe. Yeah. So you may have seen my previous month, I believe it was the last month, that I read an arc, and it was for the first part of this duet. My problem was I actually enjoyed that one. I gave it 4 stars. It probably would have been higher, but it was not marketed as a duet, and I was pissed because the pacing was off, and it left off in a cliffhanger, a big cliffhanger and a time jump, which I don't like. It literally time jumps in the epilogue 5 years. So I was very frustrated with it because it was not marketed. It's not even listed on Goodreads as a duet, which it's still not listed part 1 of blah 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 series or anything. It seems like it's a standalone. So, and the second book is still not marketed like that either. So that was my problem, was to me it was not clear that this was going to be a duet. But it left on a cliffhanger, and I was like, I want to read the second part. So I got the arc of the second part. And I was very frustrated with this book. It took me way longer than it needed to get through it. So in the first book, it's an arranged marriage. It's an age gap. This guy was a assassin for the mafia. Her father was trying to set up like an arranged marriage, and so he could make him, this guy, his basically heir to run the mafia when he's gone. She has an older sister who wants to run the mafia. She's pretty like a psychopath. She doesn't care about her sister. She doesn't care about anybody. She wants to run the mafia. But he gets to choose which sister. He picks Angel, and basically they have this, like, she tries to run away, he punishes her. It's like a BDSM kind of thing that was like way more degradation, I think. It wasn't as bad on the first one. But what ends up happening is they do get married, but something bad happens in the end of the book, which leads to the cliffhanger where she has to go on the run. And she's going on the run to protect her husband so he doesn't get set up for this crime. And she's basically goes on a run and hiding. And so then it time jumps 5 years and he has found her. So in this book, we have, it's like a captive. And he's holding her. He wants to punish her for leaving him. And he literally holds her in this room. It's like the first 50% of the book is just her being held in this room. He makes her be naked. He punishes her sexually. He degrades her. He, like, it's just, it was not for me. I don't like degradation. And it was so boring. The sex scenes were, like, cringeworthy to me. Like, the punishment was, like, excessive. And she's like getting off on it, and it was just, I did not like it. It was so boring. And then finally it picks up a little bit when she gets out of this room, and you kind of meet side characters that were interesting. They end up going to a sex club, all this kind of stuff. My biggest issue, and maybe I'll put spoilers up here, was that he was supposed to be the head of this mafia when they got married. But, spoiler from the last book, her father gets killed by her older sister, and she's gonna set up him to be the killer unless her sister goes on the run, kind of thing. And so the sister gets blamed for the murder of her father. The older sister becomes like the head of the mafia. So then we have 5 years of her being on the run, and you don't know what Gavin, I'm sorry, that's the hero's name, Gavin. You don't know what he's been up to this whole time, but somehow he has his own criminal empire now, which we don't go into. It's a lot of like holes in this story that are left like unexplored. It was literally just smut. The entire book is literally like over the top BDSM, which was not a true BDSM relationship because there was no trust. It was a captive thing, and he was like doing cruel things to her and punishing her sexually, and I didn't like it, with like zero aftercare. So I didn't like the representation of the BDSM in this. Like there's one punishment scene where he puts the shower on super hot and makes her like have that on her vagina, and I was like, no. I did not like the sex scenes. There was no love between these characters. Like, it was literally captive. Like, she was on the run. She's trying to get away. And then now she has feelings for him. It was just so ridiculous to me. This is part of my problem with, like, TikTok, is, like, making smut and over-the-top, spicy, crazy, dominating, like, kind of scenes, like, a hit now. And, like, so that's all these authors are putting out. There was no story, like nothing going on with the mafia till like the last part of the third act. We're finally getting to like the sister and all that kind of stuff. It literally explored nothing that it could have gone deeper into. His past, how he got where he was, like what happened the last 5 years, like nothing. And then they could have just had one conversation because he kept asking her why she did it and she wouldn't tell him to protect him. I'm like, he's obviously a criminal mastermind. He was still going to go after your sister. So why are you lying to him? It made zero freaking sense. So I honestly was nice to this because I gave it 3 stars because I felt bad. It's an arc. And part of my problem too is that it's not like promoted correctly as a duet. I do think that this is just pure smut, like, and that's it. and over the top smut that like does not turn me on whatsoever. I hate degradation and humiliation. I want praise, and I think I need to acknowledge that about myself before I accept arcs on these kinds of things, because you know, it's just not my thing. So somebody else who's really into that might love this book because they're into that kind of, you know, scenes and stuff. So wasn't for me. I ended up giving it 3 stars. It's 4 on the chilies, but it was not a good one for me. Sorry, I had to get a drink because ranting about that book was already getting my voice gone. So I need to go quickly because I've been talking too long about these books already. So the next one that I read was my first Sarah MacLean book. I can't believe I've never read her, but I picked up the Wicked and the Wallflower. This is book number 1 in the Bare Nickel Bastard series. I had listened to this on audiobook and I loved it. So like, I love the narration. It was really well done. I love this buildup of this world that Sarah MacLean created, you know, and then showing like more of kind of like the Covent Garden and like the lower end where this guy Devil, not his real name, but he goes by Devil, has like made himself like a self-made kind of man, obviously doing like underground kind of stuff. But I really appreciated this world. I thought it was very interesting. We have this heroine, which is Felicity, and she's kind of being snubbed by the ton, and she because she had like scandal in her history, so she's kind of like a wallflower. She considers herself a plain Jane, and she's being snubbed, so things aren't really going great for her. And then you also find out her family is not doing well financially, and they're depending on her getting a marriage to be able to take care of a lot of their debts and this financial trouble they're in, which they did not let her know that. So the thing that, it was kind of like an interesting meet cute where she kind of broke into this room at a party. She like picks locks, and Devil happened to be in there because this is like a party that this Duke that's come back into society was at, and he's kind of been like a recluse. People think he might be kind of like mad or crazy, and this Duke happens to be somebody that Devil hates and is a brother of his that he wants revenge on. So there's a lot going on with this revenge plot. Revenge plots don't always work for me, but I really liked this. When you learn everything that Devil's been through, him and his brothers, and then his sister that he cares for, they're all kind of running this underground, you know, empire kind of thing. And the Duke is like the only one that, you know, he was one of the brothers that got to be the heir. And I mean, there's more to go into that, but I don't want to ruin it for you. Just go in there blind on that. But he ends up kind of coming to an agreement with Felicity where she needs to land the Duke, because she ends up telling the mean girls that the Duke and her are like together, and like she hasn't even met the Duke. And so the Duke kind of finds out about this, but he's very cold and needs a wife. He needs an heir. And so he's like, oh yeah, you're a perfect time. Like it's perfect for me because we don't even need to live in the same house. Like, I just need a wife and an heir. So, but she wants passion in her life. And so Devil like agrees to help her, but he's helping her because of his own revenge plot for this Duke. So they end up having all these meetups, and it's super sexy. Like, I don't know why, but like the buildup of this relationship and their connection and their chemistry was just so beautiful. And like when they finally get together sexually, it was just so romantic. And I just loved Devil's character. And I thought Felicity was this like brash, ballsy kind of girl. You know, she ends up going to Covent Garden to like his area and meeting his brothers and kind of like seeing what he does. And I just kind of love that dynamic. So I really love this book. I gave it 5 stars, and it was 3 on the chilies. And I really can't wait to continue because I think Sarah MacLean's writing was so flawless. Like, it was really beautiful. So I definitely found a new author that I need to dive into their backlist. Hey guys, sorry, my phone kind of just died in the middle of me filming. Didn't know it, so I'm gonna have to refilm some of these last few books that I went over. So sorry if the angle is a little off or it's a little different, but let's do this again. Okay, so the other book that I read, the next book in this, was Shielded Wrongs by Adelaide Forrest. This is book number 4 in the Blondie Crime Syndicate. I'm really enjoying that series. It took me a while to get back to it, as usual, because I tend to jump between series. But these guys that she writes are very over the top. There's some forced breeding. There's some like possessive, crazy, dominant men. This one is not as crazy as the previous heroes, but I liked him a lot. And this is between Enzo and Sadie. And Enzo is like the head of security, and Sadie is like one of the best friends to the heroine from the first book. And she's with the heroine from the first book is with the head of this crime organization. And she basically gets targeted because she's connected to this family now. She owns her own gym. She teaches like self-defense classes, so she's very like strong and able to handle herself. But she wakes up in the middle of the night to a man on top of her attacking her, gonna take her, and she does what she does, and she's able to attack him, subdue him, tie him up, and she calls, you know, the head of the crime organization, the Blondies, and let them know what happens. So they end up wanting her to have a bodyguard because, you know, there's somebody targeting her to get to them, one of their enemies. And she doesn't really want one, but she knows she can't really totally fight this. So Enzo, he's the head of security. He ends up being the one to take her on. He immediately moves her into his house because it's a very high secure, like better security at his place. And he's immediately into her. Like, these books are kind of like the Insta-lust sometimes, or Insta-love. But he definitely wants her immediately, and he plans to make her his woman, and he definitely has to watch her 24/7. It's forced proximity. She's in his house. He kind of steps back from his usual tasks and stuff that he does for the crime organization, and he's with her 24/7. He like goes with her to the gym and all this kind of stuff. So he basically puts the claim on her pretty fast, and she's receptive to it. She's just kind of commitment phobe and like worried about getting in a relationship and falling and getting hurt. So that I don't usually like that in a heroine, but it was still good. Sadie's a very strong, independent woman, and like Enzo is just all in. He's very swoon worthy. So I really enjoyed it. I didn't like it as much as the previous books, but I think it was really good. There's a lot of kinky times in here, so a lot of spicy stuff. It was a fun read, and I am excited to get to the rest of the series. The next one I am interested for, but I think there's one, I don't know if it's been finished yet, but it was teased in this where it was like another arranged marriage of a character, and I really want to get to that one. So I ended up giving this one 4 stars and 4 on the chilies, on the spicy scale. Then I read Madness of the Horde King. This is book number 3 in the Horde Kings of Dakar. This is between Davik and Vivian, I believe, or Vivian. Sorry if I'm saying that wrong. But she was actually a slave to I think they're called the Gartan. I might be wrong on that. But they're like like the kind of enemy species to the Dakar, the Horde Kings. And she gets sent away from their leaders to go to the capital to give them a message from that leader. So she doesn't know if they're like going to kill her, or she'll be in danger or anything. She kind of has a run-in with Davik, and he is the Mad King. He kind of sees like his dead sister and sees things that like other people don't see, so they think he's crazy. He has a pretty tragic past, so it's very sad when you find out what's happened to him to make him the way he is. And he basically kind of like takes her with him and decides to keep her, kind of thing. And she's like on her own kind of mission, and has to get back for her family's safety, and because she has kind of like this poison thing that is in her from being under the mountain kind of thing. Like, I can't remember what they call it, but anyways, and with the Gartan, like that she will, if she doesn't get back there, that she could die. So it's like kind of like this time crunch to get her back, but she's not communicating that to the Horde Kings. So I liked this. I think it was a cute, sweet romance. I just wasn't connecting to the characters as much as the previous ones, but I still enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars, and it was a 3 on the spice scale. A trigger warning is for sexual assault, not of the heroine. It's a hero had previous sexual assault in his past, so just be aware of that. Then I read Brutal Vows by J.T. Geissinger. This was the fourth and final book in the Queens and Monsters series, and I absolutely loved this book. It was so good. This is between Spider and Raina. Spider, you were introduced in the last couple books because he works for Declan in the Irish Mafia. He's like his second in command. And in the previous book, he kind of fell for the heroine, but unfortunately she got taken captive and she fell for her captor, of course. So he kind of ends up getting, you know, pretty heartbroken from that. And he decides, you know what, sign me up for this arranged marriage for the good of our mafia. I'm fine with that. I don't need love or whatever. So he's set to an arranged marriage to the Cosa Nostra princess. And she is, I think, like 18. So he doesn't really plan on being sexual with her or anything. It's just like an arranged marriage. And her aunt is Raina. And Raina has been through hell. She was in an arranged marriage for, I think, 14 years. I believe that's what it was. And her husband was extremely abusive to her, like bad abuse. And he has died. They refer to her as the Black Widow because everybody knows, pretty much, they know, like, she killed her husband. But she totally got away with it. If they ask her, she says she didn't do it. She's a smart, ruthless, like, smart woman. But she has been through hell, and so she kind of has these preconceived notions or, you know, views of Spider, and she doesn't want her niece given to this older Irish mafia guy. Her brother tells her she has final say, but really he doesn't let her have the final say. So her relationship with Spider starts off kind of contentious. I don't think full enemies to lovers, but she's like pretty against him. There's a lot of funny banter. And they have a kind of crazy dynamic together because they're both extremely attracted to each other. So they're kind of fighting that for the first half of this book. When the arranged marriage happens, it's about to be the marriage. Unfortunately, the daughter gets caught in a compromising position. And Raina ends up stepping up and marrying Spider instead. And now that they're married and that they've been fighting these attractions forever, now it's on. And it is spicy. So the thing that I loved about this book was the praise, 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 praise. There's so much praise in this. And it's not only from Spider. You have so much praise coming from Raina. So that's what I loved, was he was definitely praising her. And then she kind of tested it out and gave him like some compliments and was praising him, and he got really into it, and she just loved it. So she kind of got off on like making him feel good, that power, like, and so she definitely praises Spider too. And so this just leads to such an interesting dynamic. I loved it because she's a very strong, smart woman, and so stuff comes into play also with the politics and the mafia stuff going on. But I absolutely love this book. I loved Spider in the previous books. At first in this book, he was kind of like grumpy and angry, but that's for reasons. And so, I mean, like, he's definitely got this mushy center and romantic center, and Raina just fully brings that out in him. I love him so much. So this was such a great book. I didn't totally love like the way it ended. And no, it's not that I didn't like the way it ended. It just seemed kind of unbelievable with like a woman heading up the Cosa Nostra, or like, I don't know. I just didn't seem realistic for like the way mafia actually is. It's a very male dominated society. So that was kind of weird, but I overlooked it because it was such a great story. I love Spider and I loved Raina. So trigger warnings on that is definitely extreme domestic abuse. She really went through like torture and severe beatings and like markings and all that kind of stuff from her ex-husband, or not ex-husband, her dead husband. So I gave that one 5 stars and 4 chilies. It was such a great time. If you're looking for a praise book, check it out. And then the last book that I read was The Last Wicked Scoundrel. This is a novella in the Scoundrels of St. James series. This is one of the best novellas I've ever read. It is so well-rounded. Like, I don't know how Lorraine Heath did it, but she gives you such a full emotional punch in like such a short book. I think it's like 160 pages or something, but it's a well-rounded story, and it just was very moving to me. This is the 5th and final book in that series, and this is between William Graves and Winnie. And what I love, excuse me. And what I loved about this was that you kind of are going full circle back to the first book. The first book, the heroine was literally trying to get the hero to kill Winnie's husband, because Winnie's husband is brutally abusive, like severely abusive, where she was afraid Winnie was going to get killed by her husband. So stuff happened in that where like Winnie ended up getting such a severe beating where she was almost dying from her husband. And what they ended up doing was having William Graves, who was a well-renowned surgeon, doctor. He's actually the doctor to the Queen, and he's one of their friends from childhood. He basically takes her to his home. He mends her, like gets her healthy again. She has to stay with him for a while with her son. And so they end up being friends after that. She's obviously pining for him. He's pining for her. It's been a couple years since that happened. Her husband is pretty much supposed to be dead. But they did something different in that first book where he's not dead, but he's supposed to be out of the picture. Unfortunately, now she's like smelling his scent. Things are getting moved. Like somebody's messing with her where she thinks she's going crazy or haunted by his ghost. But they know like he's alive. These friends, the Scoundrels of St. James friends, they basically have William decides to get close to her, even though he wants to get close to her. He gets close to her because he wants to keep an eye on her and make sure she doesn't get attacked or that this husband's after her. So this was just such a beautiful romance to see her come into her own, become more confident, fight for herself, like go after what she wants. Their romance was just really beautiful, and like it wasn't really spicy. Usually novellas have more spice, I feel like, but it didn't need the spice because it was more emotional. So I love this. It was a perfect like final book, and the epilogue was beautiful. I just loved it so much. I gave this one 5 stars. Again, with the no spice, there's like really maybe one sex scene, so I gave it like 2 on the spice scale, but it didn't need it. It was still really, really beautiful. So I absolutely love the Scoundrel of St. James series. I would definitely recommend it if you haven't picked it up yet. They were all amazing books. So those are all the books that I read for August, last half of August. Thank you so much for watching this video. As always, please remember to like and subscribe, and I will see you on the next one.